mental battle, not a physical one. Everybody's got trouble. Everybody's got problems. Like, the thing is, like, there's always going to be... Here's one thing, like, if you want to come up with something like that, one thing that you can be certain of is that there's somebody who has it worse than you who's gotten to where you want to be. That's it. Just remember that. Like, they've gotten that way, and it's like, again, at the end of the day, it's like you can blame it on whatever. You can blame it and say, oh, it's because of this, it's because of that, and you know what? You can be right, but at the end of the day, it doesn't change your situation. You know what I mean? It doesn't change your situation.
One thing you can be certain of in life is that there's someone that has it worse than you, but who's gotten to where you want to be. Now, this is a very interesting quote. It actually holds a lot of truth, because what happens usually in our lives is that we kind of feel sorry for ourselves, right? We feel bad about the state of our own lives and where we are at, and then because we feel sorry for ourselves, we don't develop this true strength of character and determination in order for us to improve something in our worlds, because we're too stuck in this state where we feel like, well, things are just too bad for me. But if we take a moment to actually keep an open mind and analyze, how did someone else achieve their dreams in life? Yeah, you might indeed stumble across people who've had it way worse than you, but who ended up, well, perhaps successful with their goals in life, perhaps wealthier in life in general. They might have been in huge debts. I've heard these stories all the time, actually. More than a decade ago, I remember just for fun going to some seminar. This guy on stage was all claiming that he was $200,000 in debt. Well, I've never been in debt for that much, I can tell you that much. But it sounds pretty crazy to me, but it happens more often than we realize. Now that I'm older, that's something that really, is something that's clear to me. But regardless of not having that kind of debt, he would have been way worse off than me currently, in general, actually. But yet he did become like a multimillionaire. At least that's what he claimed on stage. I can't even remember what the guy's name was, to be honest, because it wasn't really that interesting to me at the time. And even now, I don't necessarily care that much about people telling stories on how they became multimillionaires, because it's not so much money that I'm focused on in life. It's more about learning more about the power of my own consciousness in general, so I can just use it for whatever I find important. And it's the same for you, I'd say. You should use your consciousness to get what you want out of life, and in order to do so, we're going to have to be smart about it. We're going to have to keep analyzing things that can help us win and succeed more effectively. So this quote from Asmongold about that there's people out there that have it worse than you, but who gotten to where you want to be, it should be followed up with always the question, okay, so how did they do that though? Because you can see it, and then some people in their ignorance become jealous and envious of that person, or they think they don't deserve it at all because they're so terrible, or they were so in such a terrible place. How did they get so blessed, etc.? Like, that's also not really constructive and helpful. So if you start analyzing, well, how did they get there though? Well, that's when you can start actually learning how to start winning for yourself. Now, this quotation from Asmongold is also pretty similar to what Bob Proctor once said. He would say it a little differently. He said that if you're feeling bad in life, you can always relate or compare yourself to somebody that has it worse than you, and then you won't feel as bad. See, that's one way of going about it as well. It might not be the nicest way, actually, because ultimately, if we're going to only look at how we are better off than others, then it can potentially set up for a sort of bad mindset where you start becoming a little arrogant and full of yourself if you do it wrongly. So I know with someone like Bob Proctor, etc., he didn't at least come across as arrogant, at least not to me. I don't know his private life entirely, but the thing is that this is another method of you at least feeling better. But what we really want to get at is understanding that in your case, no matter where you're at in life, even if it's bad, odds are there's somebody out there that has it worse than you. That's just a fact of life, most likely, unless you are in some very poor country, but most of us in the Western world, we are overall better off than some people out there, man. We can't deny this. But yet then some people in poor countries become very wealthy. They become able to serve people. And it's because they either consciously or unconsciously learn to use their imagination in order to succeed, you see? Because this power of imagination, this power for success, well, it exists within all of us, but we have to learn to work with it, regardless of the circumstances in which we find ourselves. So even if they're terrible, you can still imagine yourself out of the situation, and as you learn to imagine success in your mind and what that would be all about for you, that is when you start to generate the road towards its realization, as long as you stay focused on the vision. As long as you stay in harmony with the dream, you will grow there. So as you see, the problem is that most people, they only temporarily are aware of their dream, and then the circumstances of their lives, especially if they're bad, start to take over and start to grab all of their attention, and so they're not really focused on their dream anymore, but simply on complaining and feeling bad and sorry again for themselves all over again. So we don't want to do that. In order to kind of express this point a little bit more, I wanted to share the following story with you to hopefully give you some better idea on what to really focus on. So it starts out with a man was sleeping under a bridge. Now his predicament was being homeless. At this particular night the weather was neither cold nor warm. It was just right, but the only downside was the rain coming from the sky with no indication of it stopping anytime soon. On that particular night a stranger was out for a walk, holding his umbrella to keep him from melting in the rain. As he approached the bridge, he saw the homeless man was fast asleep. So he looked for a moment and decided to walk over and wake the guy up. He asked, "Are you okay?" The homeless man replies, "Well, things could be better, just trying to get some rest after searching for food all day." The stranger asked him how long he has been living in these conditions and was told for about 5 years. 5 years? You must be a very tough guy for lasting that long without a roof over your head, the stranger remarked. "Well, I have one rule in life, which is no matter how hard things get, I shall never give up on myself," the homeless person said. The stranger revealed to the guy that he himself used to be homeless for even longer. 8 years he was homeless. And one day during a rainy night he heard a voice in the depths of his mind that told him, "To solve your problems, use your imagination wisely." Now the stranger went on to explain that as he kept contemplating this statement, he soon found creative ways to solve his homelessness and end up a wealthy person. Now the homeless person was fascinated by the statement the kind stranger just shared, and he said he would contemplate it for himself this very night, since for some reason it was calling out to him. They kept talking for a while longer, and then the stranger had to go on with his own journey. Now barely 12 months passed and the stranger and homeless man bumped into each other in a fancy restaurant. The homeless man was no longer homeless. He was wearing a fine-looking suit. He even had a girlfriend waiting for him at the table. So the stranger asked him what happened in between now and being homeless. "You happened," he said. "Your words happened and gave me the hope I needed to dare to look within and ways to use my mind more effectively towards a passionate purpose, so I didn't remain homeless forever. In fact, by now I created my own business, writing about my struggles, and then I realized I can overcome all my problems by using my imagination. It is something I have dedicated all my life to, sharing with whoever wants to learn how they can use their imagination too, in order to overcome their struggles. It is such a blessed power, it never stops amazing me," he said. The stranger shook his hand, smiled and said, "You know something? To learn this is the whole purpose of living. To awaken your inherent powers of consciousness in order to outgrow the limitations of the flesh. It is the way into the kingdom of God, as they would say, which is the field of all possibilities, and I'm sure I will meet you there as well. And so it is for you, and for me, and all of us. Once we learn to use and obey our imagination, we will discover the true nature of the God force within us and the universe at large." So you see, people that have it worse off than you but end up succeeding at their dreams, they either consciously or unconsciously have learned to use their imagination in order to succeed in life. Now, if we're being stuck and if we're aware that there are people out there that had it worse than us but still winning and we aren't, we have to, like Neville said, contemplate and take it serious. Am I actually deliberately, consciously using my imagination, or am I just kind of wasting this power by not using it? So people learn about imagination, and then what happens is that they don't really use it all the time. But we're called upon to use this power consistently and deliberately, progressively for our dreams, regardless of our physical circumstances, so that we learn to grow out of them. So no matter how bad things get for you or for me, we can most likely find people out there that had it worse, but they still succeeded. Because either again, consciously or consciously, they learn to use their minds effectively. And this is an ability, a possibility that is open to all of us, regardless of where we stand. It's just a matter of us taking the time to actually learn more about consciousness and how it works and what it can do for us. And then as we learn about it, to actually apply it. So we don't just entertain the ideas for fun for a little while and then forget all about it. We want to take that information and actually start working with it and make stuff happen. Because once we do that, that's when results can change for the better. That's when you become one of those people that might end up inspiring others, because you yourself were suddenly outgrowing all the limitations of your life. Yes, you really wield that power. Some people, they find it too good to be true. They can't believe it. But I'm telling you all of this for free. You didn't even have to pay me any money to learn about this. The price you're going to have to pay, though, is to experiment with it and apply it in your life and see what happens. You see, that's the only price you pay, which is your own energy and effort in making use of this power of imagination. And if you're willing to pay the price, well, then you're worthy of receiving the reward. Now, if you're new to this channel, consider subscribing to receive inspirational videos on a regular basis. And with that being said, dear viewer, never forget that we are the dreamers.